because they have no idea how to get in touch with this person.
So, Jonathan, back to that in just a moment, but I want to ask you first about the deadlines here that are in these purported ransom notes that were sent to media outlets. One of the deadlines, Thursday night, passed. The other one is Monday. What's the significance of these?
Well, listen, this is a tactic by the hostile actor or the person that potentially has abducted Miss Guthrie. It's establishing this sense of urgency with the progressive consequences of not meeting those deadlines. We now know that there is a deadline on Monday, and we already passed by last night's deadline. So all of this, John, is done by intent, right? They want to the abductor wants to create this sense of urgency to force the family to make this decision to pay a ransom. Now, the way that you counter that is exactly what the family is doing. They talked through that first deadline, meaning we saw family members get out there in advance and try to engage with that abductor, knowing that in the note it says there'll be no other ways to contact us. But you need proof of life before you're going to spend millions of dollars sending it to an account via with cryptocurrency, unknown to who it's going to and whether or not you'll ever see Miss Guthrie again. So again, it's putting a lot of pressure on the family and to make these decisions in such a very compressed time frame.
Yeah, and explain again in more detail why we saw this new video from the family last night, I guess presumably as one of those deadlines was passing.
Yeah. John, these public family appeals, we now have seen two of them, are typically seen when when the internal leads just aren't there and time is critical. In this case, fits that criteria. We already know that we have two time markers with this ransom note. And really what they're trying to do is have the family appeal directly and characterize Miss Guthrie in this, in a way that, it would appeal emotionally, potentially, to the abductor, categorizing her as a mother, as a grandmother, as a human. This strong emotional grounding is really important. Why? Because even though the note says that there's no further communication, they're trying to elicit some sort of response. And in that response, hopefully, they will get some sort of proof of life. So this is a proven tactic that law enforcement has used in the past. But let me just put a finer point on this. It doesn't necessarily confirm the legitimacy of a ransom note, but that's what they have right now. So it's a signal to whomever may have taken Miss Guthrie that the family and law enforcement is willing to engage, all with the hope of bringing her back safe.
And Jonathan, the blood splatter, the fact of it is obviously notable, but what can be gleaned from it?
Well, listen, this is a great piece of investigative information. Why? Because it allows investigators now to know, hey, there's a high likelihood that she was taken away from the home via the front door. So we have a potential direction of travel. The blood splatter analysis can give us directionally, potentially, where a wound was on her condition when she left the house. So again, it's not the primary piece of evidence, but it's another data point that then matches against some of the timeline material that we have established. Again, another tool in this that investigators are utilizing to find Miss Guthrie.
And obviously they need anything they can get at this point. Jonathan Wackrow, thank you so much for helping us understand all of these new details. Sarah? All right, this morning, new details coming out about the alleged ransom notes sent to several media outlets in Nancy Guthrie's abduction, including demands for payment in Bitcoin, and saying the family will have no way to contact their mother or the kidnapper. TMZ received one of those notes, and its founder, Harvey Levin, has been speaking with CNN.
This person thought through the markers of showing that it's real. The Bitcoin address, we checked immediately, and it's a real address.
With us now, CNN senior legal analyst Ellie Honig, former NYPD Lieutenant Darren Porcher. And Lieutenant, let me just start with you. These notes being sent to media outlets, not law enforcement, not the family. How does that complicate things, and why would someone do that?
This is an aberration, to say the least, because as you mentioned, John, these notes are traditionally introduced to the family and law enforcement. But what works is an IP address and the metadata is connected to this note that's been sent. So law enforcement can work to find out where this came from. There could also be a dead end. Many times you have an IP address in a place like Nigeria and not at the location. But law enforcement has been able to extract some information that is somewhat telling. When I say it's telling, meaning it does corroborate what Nancy was wearing. So what we're looking to focus on is there any proof of life? The negotiators, the hostage negotiators are going to continue to try to connect with the kidnappers, because what it does is it buys time. The kidnappers, believe it or not, want to get this done as quick as possible. And you look at it historically, there's a very low percentage of these kidnappings that have been successful. But at the same token, we want to continue that discourse between law enforcement and the kidnappers to get Nancy home safe and take them into custody.
Ellie Honig, counselor, obviously former federal prosecutor, you've been involved in so many different law enforcement efforts. In this case, you have local police, you have the FBI now. Is there a role for the lawyers? What are they doing at this point?
There is, John. So as Lieutenant Porcher said, the top priority, the only priority right now is the safe return of Ms. Guthrie and the identification of her attackers. But a lot of the steps that you're going to take investigatively to find the attackers are also going to become important evidence down the line. So for example, the reason you secure the home, the reason you look at every inch for forensics is because you want to figure out who did this, but that's also going to become crucial evidence down the line. Now, the role of prosecutors right now is in a supporting capacity. So I assure you there is a team of prosecutors standing by. So if investigators need a search warrant, if they suddenly need to get into a home
how long
or a car,
it takes a beginner
there are
like my
prosecutors
dad
ready to
go
draft up
from
those
ear
affidavits,
belly
to
to
go
get
find the
ripped
judge. If
again
it's
with
after
Catchy.
hours or on a
How
weekend,
old
you
is
have to
your
know
father?
who
He
is
is
the
56.
emergency on-duty judge, to go to their
Oh,
house
perfect.
if
By
you
the
need
end of
to
November,
get those
you won't
warrants
even
sworn out.
recognize
So
him.
the
But
job
what if
right
he
now for
hasn't worked
prosecutors
out
is
in
support the
years?
That's even
investigation.
better.
The
Tai
prosecution
Chi
will
was
come
built for
later,
men
but a lot of the
40+.
evidence that's being garnered
Isn't the
will
gym
come into
better
play.
after 40?
And when you
The
say
gym
be ready to
breaks
act
you.
suddenly, Ellie,
Tai
I
Chi will
imagine, or
make
I
you
would have
feel
to believe,
better and
well, let me
lose
put it
weight
this way, I
faster
certainly
than in your
hope
20s.
Does
that
he
they
need
have
any
the
equipment?
capability of
No, his
acting
body is
in
enough.
seconds if there's reason to.
Just do it for 9 minutes a day.
Yeah, so
and see your body
I
feel
haven't been in
younger.
a situation
So what's the
quite like
first
this, but I
step?
have been in
Click the link,
emergency
get the
situations.
app,
What
and
you want to
start
have up
tomorrow.
on your computer screen is as much of a search warrant affidavit as you know. So I promise you, every time new evidence comes in, a new ransom note, you are plugging that into your document so that when that moment comes, when a police officer calls, all you do is just plug in that one or two sentences, location, dash it off. Search warrant. All you do is just plug in that one or two sentences. There's always going to be an emergency judge or magistrate in immediate 24/7. There's always going to be an emergency judge or magistrate. You want to be in 24/7. You have to know how to get to that person.
Minutes
But
matter
yes, you
here,
want to be in
seconds
position
matter
to act
here.
within
And
minutes.
Lieutenant, you mentioned minutes matter here, hostage seconds matter negotiators here. And Lieutenant, you mentioned
There's no
hostage
negotiation, at least
negotiators
directly. So
here.
how do negotiators?
There's
if
no
they're involved, or to
negotiation,
the
at least
extent they're
directly.
involved?
So
What
how
is
do
their area of
negotiators, if
expertise
they're
and
involved,
how
or
are
to the
they
extent they're
trying
involved,
to
what
work
is their
without
area of
being able to
expertise,
make
and
direct
how are they
contact
trying
with whoever has
to
Nancy
work
Guthrie?
without being
For
able
starters,
to make direct
the
contact
negotiators are
with
working
whoever
in
has
tandem
Nancy
with the
Guthrie?
family.
For
Because
starters,
they're trying
the
to
negotiators
develop,
are working in
they have
tandem with
developed
the
a level of
family.
confidence.
Because
They're
whereas
trying to
the
develop,
family is
they have developed a level of confidence. So when we look, family is comfortable speaking to the negotiator. So when we look to what was the statements that were made by Savannah Guthrie as well as her brother, this is something that was constructed by the negotiator to get the appropriate messaging out there, because we want to make sure that we do have a level of correspondence. They want Nancy as quick as possible. The hostage negotiator, the hostage takers want this money as quick as possible. But another thing we have to bear in mind, there are hoaxes out there. We just arrested someone recently for a hoax as it relates to this ransom demand. So we need to authenticate and make sure that this is sound before we move forward.
And it is worth noting, at least as far as we can tell, this new video that came from the Guthrie family last night came out at about the time that one of the purported ransom deadlines was passing. They do seem to be in sync there, perhaps even deliberately sent out. Ellie, again, lots of law enforcement involved here. What's the division between this local, state, and federal of how this is going?
In an ideal scenario, John, and it does appear this is happening here, you'll have coordination between the state and the feds, because sometimes they have different capacities. So, for example, your locals might have better access to your forensics processing, right, to be able to take a hair sample, a blood sample, and process it quickly. But on the other hand, the feds might be better to get up on a wiretap quickly or to get a search warrant quickly. So you need to basically triage here and use whoever's in best position. But it does appear, to the credit of the local authorities, they are working hand in hand. You have sheriffs, you have local police, you have feds involved, and that's the best possible way to approach this.
Yeah, let's hope. Ellie Honig, Darren Porter, thanks so much for all your help on this. Sarah?
Good evening, I'm Laura Coates. Nancy Guthrie's family is waiting. They are hoping for any sign, any word that she is safe. The first deadline from unverified ransom notes sent to multiple media outlets that has now passed. The FBI confirmed in a news conference today it was set for 5 o'clock. Right after that time passed, Savannah Guthrie's brother Cameron issued this plea.
Whoever is out there holding our mother, we want to hear from you. We haven't heard anything directly. We need you to reach out, and we need a way to communicate with you so we can move forward. But first, we have to know that you have our mom. We want to talk to you, and we are waiting for contact.
It was just last night that Nancy's children released their first message asking for proof of life. And now we have some context as to why they're putting out these videos. TMZ got one of the ransom notes, and RV11, TMZ's founder, is revealing new information about what it says.
The letter says, you will have no way of contacting me. This is the only contact. So that's why they're pleading for proof of life. That's why they are begging, because they have no idea how to get in touch with this person.
We also now know why these notes are getting so much attention, even though law enforcement still isn't publicly confirming if they're even legit. It has to do with what they say about specific items at Nancy Guthrie's home.
They do mention an Apple Watch, as the FBI said, and they do mention the floodlight, the damaged floodlight. There is something else, and it is the placement of the Apple Watch, which has not come out. And if that placement is accurate, I'm sure that is something that puts this letter on the FBI's radar.
And that second deadline I mentioned, the FBI says the second deadline is Monday. And RV11 tells us the note indicates that that deadline is much more consequential. Police insist they still have no suspect or person of interest, but we did learn this. The blood that was found on Guthrie's front porch at 5:32 p.m. on Saturday. She was dropped off back at her house at 9:48. Now fast forward 4 hours, and we're at 1:47 a.m. on Sunday. The doorbell camera disconnects, a doorbell camera that's now missing. The camera software detected a person on camera at 2:12 a.m., but the software didn't retain the footage. And at 2:28 a.m., Guthrie's pacemaker app, it lost connection to her phone. And it was just before noon when her family got home and went to her home and reported her missing. So here's where we are. There's no suspect. There's no proof of life. No indication whoever took her will make contact again. And about 4 days until the second, more consequential deadline. And remember the urgency here, because Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old and has now been 5 days without her medication. The sheriff says the reward for information that gets her back is now $50,000. And he urges for help, but also for hope.
People are always asking, do I believe she's alive? Absolutely. Absolutely. There's nothing to say she isn't. And so we have to live on that.
Tonight, we have a team of reporters, law enforcement experts covering every new aspect of this case. And believe me, there are many. We begin with Brianna Whitney, who was outside the Pima County Sheriff's Department tonight. It was actually at the news conference earlier today. She is a reporter with Arizona's 3 TV and CBS 5 and host of True Crime Arizona Live. Brianna, you were the one who asked that very key question that got the FBI to reveal that there were
piece of information, because that's going to tell us really how they're going forward with deeming whether this ransom note is legit or not. So eventually, the FBI special agent in charge said the first deadline tonight at 5 p.m. We know that that has since passed, and it was right after it passed that Savannah Guthrie posted another video with her brother this time, pleading with the abductor to come forward and contact them with more information. We know that the second deadline is sometime on Monday, but the FBI didn't go into detail at what time that is and what more of a demand the person is making. They did say it is very unusual that by this point in time, if they receive a ransom note, that they wouldn't have had any contact with the kidnapper or the abductor or any sense of communication with them. This is really odd. And so if Monday passes and there still is no communication, still no proof of life, then I think that's when the FBI will look at, is this credible? Probably and possibly not.
That's a big gamble if you're the family to think about all those factors. And one of the big questions that we had when we last spoke, just last night, was why was there so much new activity at the home yesterday? What have you been able to learn?
Yeah, and that's something that I asked the sheriff today, too, because we were all wondering that. They had seemingly processed the scene. He had told us that. And then all of a sudden, you had crime tape going back up and you had agents bringing out new pieces of evidence. So I asked him, was there something specific that made you guys go back out there? Did you get a new tip or a new lead and you needed to go investigate inside the home again? He said, for the most part, they obviously want to make sure that they got everything, but because there's so many agencies that are part of this investigation, including the FBI wanted to then go into the house and see everything based on what they know at this point in the investigation. Now, he didn't go into detail as to what exact evidence was taken out of the home. We can assume that whatever was taken out, they're doing possibly DNA testing on. They're looking at, any sort of evidence that they could get from that. But when asked about, well, why did you close down the scene and allow family and media and neighbors to walk up to the door and walk all over there and then, have it be, for lack of a better word, a crime scene again. He said Monday morning quarterback. Yeah, the sheriff's department should not have opened that scene back up. They probably should have kept it secure because you do have other agencies coming in who want to see for themselves what's in there. And if there's other evidence to be collected, they want to be able to do so. But I asked the sheriff, I said, so you could have a contamination of the scene then now. And he said, we'll leave that up to the courts to decide.
Brianna Whitney, now a Monday deadline. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's turn now to former Navy SEAL commander and hostage working group coordinator for the U.S. Embassy in Iraq, Dan O'Shea, also former NYPD hostage negotiator, Wally Zines. Glad to have both of you here because, Wally, I want to get your read on these two deadlines in the alleged ransom note. Why do you think they gave these two separate deadlines, spaced several days apart?
Well, you got to understand first important thing in any hostage negotiation, you have to have another person to talk to. You have to have the good guy and the bad guy. And if you don't have another person to talk to, you have no negotiating going on. And that's one of the problems you have here. And when you talk about deadlines, you can bring up the point to them is that, hey, you want Bitcoins. We have to go get Bitcoins. We have to do this in relationship to work with a bank. We have to work with having it shipped. So the deadlines can be moved from our part if we have a conversation. You must have two people. You can't just be talking to yourself. And that's the way that works. In relationship to the crime scene, what you mentioned, it's very common to go back to a crime scene. Mm-hmm. We always expand a crime scene when we get more information and more evidence to follow through. So that's something that is a common practice. In relationship to that crime scene,
sure.
They should always keep it taped off. And one of the other things in relationship to that is anyone who walks into that crime scene now, we always take their name, their shield, and what command they come from. So we have a steady roster of everyone that's coming into that particular area.
I'm sure that becomes an interview list at some point in time, too. Dan, I want to pick up on this idea of the ransom notes in particular, and the idea of, look, you can't negotiate with yourself, but I do wonder if that's precisely the point here, because Savannah Guthrie's brother, Cameron, appeared in the new video message tonight, asking for the abductor or abductors to reach out because the note has no contact information. The way that Wally's describing it is a question of leverage, right? You have no leverage to negotiate. if the person will not communicate with you. Is that the precise motivation of the person who's asking for the money?
Well, as was pointed out by my colleague previously, you need two people to be talking to make a deal. Right now, the ransom demands have gone to media networks. There hasn't been a direct correlation. There hasn't been a proof of life provided by the kidnappers, proving they actually have Mrs. Guthrie in custody, that she's still alive and that she's still good. And that's where we have the point that, are they really motivated by money? I think there may be to the point that they're ideologically driven. They're consuming the media that's driven on this case with the deadlines, with the focus of the U.S. president, with the head of the FBI. The entire nation is focused on this case, but they are not acting in good faith in doing this negotiation. So you have to wonder, what do these deadlines really mean? Are they just ratcheting it up for the news media focus, or are they really trying to make a deal to get Miss Guthrie home to her family?
You know, you have to wonder about that. A third way to look at it, though, is that they want a purely transactional connection here, and they have no interest in being persuaded, which tells me maybe a different sort of criminal profile that we'll look at later on in the show as well. Wally, TMZ's Harvey Levin says that the ransom note included something that has not been publicly reported yet, the placement, apparently, of Nancy Guthrie's Apple Watch. Does that make the letter appear to be more legit in your view, if there is something specific that they can chew over in law enforcement?
Well, that's very important. You know, when you talk to the individuals, if you ever get that conversation where you start to negotiate, first of all, the negotiation starts off, as mentioned, they want to see if Nancy is still alive. They want to have some indication that she is there. And, you know, keep in mind one thing, you know, AI is a big product now that we have a lot of dealings to deal with. I mean, they can take a voice and put it in AI. They can make a picture and make it move like a movie in AI. But you have to be able to beat that system too. So if they did do something like that, you would want to have some sort of indication like, tell me, what's my mom's password in case she has a problem? Or what did she get us for Christmas 3 years ago? That would throw AI off right away. But in relationship to the contacts, what's going on inside, you have to look at the letter that was sent or the email that was sent, and you have to go with the premise that it is real until you can disprove it. And that's a very important part of the whole case. There are little things that come in there that no one else knows about, and they will come and bring that specific thing up if they have, in fact, found something that has to do with the letter and inside the residence.
Yeah, it certainly explains why law enforcement would want to be a little bit tight-lipped, Dan, about what they're releasing to the public, so they could confirm different details like that, as opposed to giving everyone the whole enchilada, so to speak. But let me ask you, Dan, how do you get someone to communicate in this situation who is not offered a way to communicate, who is not followed up, who is not providing proof of life? Is there a way to draw them to the table?
Well, again, I believe that they're violating the rules of how this business is played. If it's truly a kidnap for ransom, they're going to negotiate. It's just like every major deal. You do things behind the door to get the deal on the other side, and you make concessions, but you don't want to publicly admit to what you did. And the fact that they're not showing good faith, they haven't given proof of life. They're negotiating through media outlets. TMZ is a gossip channel, and they're sending a ransom demand to a Hollywood gossip channel. So that's where I have concerns that they're driving this and they're putting it on the public and the timeline, because obviously the sensitivities about her age, her medication, and her health. So I believe these abductors are not acting in good faith, and that's where I think the focus needs to be. They're not playing by the traditional rules of kidnap for ransom, and you need to look at what are the real motivations. Is it ransom or is it something else?
You have to wonder. I'm glad TMZ at least is something to work with for the family, and hopefully they're going to be able to move the needle. Dan O'Shea, Wally Zines, thank you so much. I want to get to criminologist now and behavioral analyst Casey Jordan, because Casey, the nation's been riveted by this, trying to figure out the type of person that would do something like this? And I know you've been thinking about it as well. I mean, authorities are saying that her doorbell camera was disconnected, was taken. Combine that with the fact that there is no stated way to communicate with this person or people. What does that tell you about the kind of person who would have done this?
Whoever is responsible for this, and it's more likely to be at least a pair of people than a singleton. It could even be a group, as Wally pointed out. But
why?
They're operating from a position of power right now. And some of that could just be like smoke and mirrors, if you will. So we look at the motive. Okay, first of all, they have opportunity and they have the skill to do it. But the skill set for somebody who abducts would usually be different than the skill set for a cyber criminal who's all interested in the Bitcoin. This could all be wrapped up in one person, but more likely a team. The power comes
well, hold
from
on, Casey, tell me for a second, what the difference between somebody who would be a cyber criminal versus somebody who would be an in-person abductor? What is the distinction?
Okay, it's not impossible for them to be the same person, but generally you are going to have at least one person to abductors, somebody to drive the car, somebody to be in charge of the communications, somebody who knows how to get that Bitcoin transferred is usually not the same person who muscles an 84-year-old lady into a car. And it just is easier when you have kind of a division of labor. But I mean, the bottom line is they're operating from a position of power that they don't really have because they haven't provided proof of life. And that alarms me a little bit because they may have started from a position of power where they had Nancy alive. And if that is no longer the case and they can't provide that proof, they have some choices. They can bluff their way and hope that the family pays money without proof of life, or they can just abandon the entire catastrophe and go off into the sunset because communication greatly ups the ante of them getting caught. And they know that. So at this point, number one, we're not 100% certain that this ransom demand is legitimate. They could just be really good at guessing and that art of probability. It's clearly enough to make the police believe it's legitimate. But, you know, who knows where the Apple Watch was? Let's try on the nightstand. I mean, at some point, it could just be an opportunistic person, a hoax, who is just clutching at straws and getting lucky. And it could be the true abductors. But if they are out there and we are dealing with that communication, and with that, we have Savannah's video last night and her brother's video today, we should hear from them. If they are profit motivated, they are going to get in touch. But if they do that after saying, this is the last time you will hear from us, then that gives the Guthrie family and the police the upper hand. So right now, it's just a chess game.
Unbelievable to think about how a family copes with something like this. The idea of the gamesmanship when your loved one's life is on the line. The ransom letter, where it was sent, is really perplexing to many people. You just heard one of our hostage negotiators, experts, talking about it being sent to local outlets, sent to TMZ, not directly to the Guthrie family or even Savannah Guthrie's employer, right? She's a very visible person. You know where she works. I would assume one would go to there, but it seemed not to have. What does that tell you?
It seems not to have, and yet it's possible they tried and that email got lost in the hundreds of thousands of emails that probably came through to NBC when this happened. I'm not 100% convinced that they didn't try. It would be kind of hard to get directly through to Savannah unless you have her direct email to start with. You'd be going through other channels. And if it was 3 days before this surfaced, it makes me wonder if they did attempt, but for whatever reason, that attempt to reach the family failed, and then they went with the news outlets as plan B. But it does not really fit with all of the other sophistication they've demonstrated. I mean, let's admit, they're succeeding so far. No footprints, no tire tracks, no video. They got that Ring camera off. I mean, this is why I think they have some division of labor and maybe some people on the team are falling down.
Certainly reconnaissance at the very least in advance. Casey Jordan, thank you so much.
The markers of showing that it's real. The Bitcoin address, we checked immediately, and it's a real address.
That was 11 tonight, revealing the financial request in that alleged ransom note for Nancy Guthrie. Bitcoin, he says. Levin also says the letter was emailed to TMZ. It was also emailed to 2 local stations in Arizona. I want to talk with Eric O'Neill, a top cybersecurity expert and former FBI counterintelligence operative. He wrote Spies, Lies, and Cybercrime, Security Tactics to Outsmart Hackers and Disarm Scammers. Well, per person to talk about this. Let's talk about the letter that apparently was asking for millions in Bitcoin. Many people think that means it's automatically untraceable. Is Bitcoin truly untraceable?
Well, Bitcoin is cryptocurrency, and cryptocurrency is part of an open public ledger. So you can actually see where that Bitcoin address is, that wallet, and any transactions that go in and out. And that gives the FBI in particular a very excellent avenue to start learning who owns the wallet. Because at some point, when you take money in cryptocurrency, you have to turn it into cash, otherwise it's worthless. And that means you have to go to some sort of exchange or peer-to-peer network or turn that cryptocurrency into a stable coin, a coin that can be tracked by law enforcement. So at that point, there's an ability for law enforcement to determine who owns the particular wallet that is holding that Bitcoin.
How about for the email? Because it was provided, no contact information, but it was emailed to those media outlets. Could that provide some sort of lead in figuring out who sent it? How do you track that back?
Yeah, certainly, Laura, because email has metadata. An email has to have an origin, an account has to be created, and then it has to move through servers. So for a normal person, it's difficult to hide where the email is moving through the internet, right? It's going to touch servers, and those are points of access for the FBI. You would have to be incredibly sophisticated to know how to use dark web and the Tor network, and that's a level of sophistication that may be beyond just a basic kidnapper. And even if you have that sophistication, you have to do every communication right. You can never make a single mistake. Otherwise, law enforcement can key in on you.
There's no communication yet other than the ransom letter we're aware of. I wonder, in terms of trying to track in the way you've described, would it behoove the family to provide some small amount of money that essentially has a tracking device of sorts on it at that point to figure out where it would go in the conversion scheme?
Well, what they could do is put some money into the Bitcoin, in Bitcoin into the wallet, right? Into the cryptocurrency wallet. But if the kidnappers, and we're assuming that there are kidnappers and that this is a legitimate ransom note, are savvy, they're going to let it sit. And they can just let it sit until they either get more of the money or they decide to communicate.
How long is that process to try to track?
Well, it depends. What they're going to do is they're going to try to track it as soon as it lands and then moves. And the trick is they're going to watch it and see where it moves, either into a criminal network that they understand and they can try and seize, or into a legitimate banking network, because at some point the criminals are going to try to actually turn that cryptocurrency into cash that they can spend.
Have you been actively door-knocking the neighbours and businesses and collecting those doorbell cameras? And is there anything that has come up there? And how far is that?
I can't tell you whether things have come up or not, but we have door-to-door. I think we're still doing door-to-door, not just in that neighborhood, but other neighborhoods.
The sheriff today making it quite clear officers will do everything they can to search for clues in the neighborhood Nancy Guthrie was taken from. And that includes even going door to door. But earlier, the sheriff told CNN's Ed Lavandera that the location of Guthrie's home, it's made obtaining video evidence pretty challenging.
It's not very well lit. And when I got there, I thought it's going to be real difficult to get Ring cameras. These are homes that are set back on probably 5 acres of land, several acres of land, and the vegetation from the roadway to that home is pretty thick. So we knew those challenges were going to be there, but we've faced those before.
Well, my next guest knows that location very well. He is one of her neighbors who lives walking distance from her home. Tom Pugh joins me now. Tom, thank you for being here. This is pretty unbelievable, and I'm sure hitting very close to home. And you heard the sheriff saying that they're still going door to door. Has law enforcement made it to your home, Tom?
No, they haven't. But I have heard from all the other neighbors that I know that they have gone to door. I'm sort of on the peripheral of the immediate proximity to her house. So I expect they'll be here, but I think you probably heard earlier there have been a lot of helicopters over here, and search and rescue, and you know, the organization that I'm a member of, the communications person, the Catalina Foothills Association, has sent email blasts to 1,500 homes or so, urging everybody to also completely cooperate with the police and to offer any information they may have that has not been normally discovered through the police methods so far.
I certainly hope you're able to do that around the community. And I mean, some people, they don't know your community very well. They're making a lot of assumptions that these homes would have elaborate security or surveillance systems and be able to see what's happening at others' homes. Is that the case? Was the neighborhood concerned about crime before now?
Well, yes, I think there's ordinary efforts to prevent ordinary crime in our neighborhood, just like in most neighborhoods today. And people do have surveillance. They are alert. It's a very self-supporting neighborhood where the people take care of each other and look out for each other. But Laura, you got to admit, this is such a strange one-off crime. You know, I've been watching your program up to now, and you know, as everybody has noted, I mean, I can't speak to the criminal nature of this thing, but the fact that there are no tire tracks and that it clearly must have taken more than one person, and that there's no trace so far, in spite of my association's effort to encourage people to keep looking, and the sheriff, FBI, I don't sense that there's a fall off in our normal attention to security.
Are you finding that people are more afraid now? I mean, the nature of this. Do you feel as though you are afraid, or this is a threat to your greater community?
You know, it's difficult. I guess every person must be reacting to this slightly differently. I don't personally, if you're asking me that question, I feel this is such an unusual crime that it seems unlikely that it will be repeated, or that you know, surely there aren't people traveling around the neighborhood in vans waiting to abduct 84-year-old women. You know, it has a strange nature about it.
Indeed, and we're exploring that more and more. Tom Pugh, thank you so much.
Thank you, Laura. Appreciate it. Appreciate all your staff has done and said to us out here. Really grateful. Thank you.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm grateful for you to be on today and share. Awful. Thank you so much. Today, you know, the sheriff reiterated that technology is going to play a crucial role in trying to crack this case. And the FBI actually gave some more information about how exactly they're doing this.
We are actively reviewing and analyzing information from all digital sources, which includes banks, social media companies, phone companies, and any other organizations where a digital footprint could have been captured. All this information provides data points and helps put the picture together.
Well, I'm joined now by Jeff Bennett. He's a retired FBI special agent who actually specialized in analyzing cellular data to try to solve crimes. Well, Jeff, describe what are the capabilities the FBI would have when it comes to locating a missing person or a suspect using the cell phone data?
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk in this case about DNA evidence. And when we talk about cell phone evidence, it's really like electronic DNA for our lives. And so when we look at the cell phone evidence, it represents who we are, just like DNA in our blood. It's where we go, it's who we talk to, it's what time we get up in the morning, it's when we go to bed at night. It's if we speak to somebody new, it's if we stop speaking to somebody in our life. It represents who we are. So if we can exploit this data, especially in this case, we may be able to determine if there's a piece of information that may be valuable in this case. If there was somebody that was speaking to Nancy that could be of value. Additionally, we can identify her locations through those cell phone records. Through the records, we can identify where she had been. We can map those records. We can identify geographically where she went, when she went there. We can also look at who went with her. We can geographically identify what other devices were there. And we can attempt to detect a pattern. And if that pattern, if there are devices over time and distance that are suspicious, that is something we would look into. And that is something that we often used, myself and my partners, in whodunit cases like this is. Along with the LAPD and South Bureau Homicide, whodunit cases are often solved using geofence cell phone evidence.
Well, let's talk about something I did see today. There were images of law enforcement at the home, and they were carrying Celebrite cases. What do those do? And does that tell you the direction of what they might be looking at?
So, yes and no. Celebrite is just a computer that mirrors a cell phone. It also mirrors and copies deleted or obfuscated files. So it copies a cell phone, quite simply. There's nothing more than that. But it's not to determine that somebody's a suspect, but rather possibly to rule somebody out.
Interesting.
That's another thing that cell phone records can do, is we get the cell phone records possibly for family members so that we can confirm their stories, so that when we look at their records, we can confirm their fact patterns are consistent with their independent cell phone records.
Digital alibis. Really quickly, I know, Jeff, we have no time, but we've been hearing from investigators that Nancy Guthrie has a pacemaker, and this is interesting, that was disconnected from her cell phone. Many have been wondering whether that could possibly be tracked. Could it?
Well, it depends on how that cell phone maker was built. Generally, they are radio frequency established. They're radio frequency connected to a base station. Best way to think about a pacemaker is kind of like an AirTag. It needs a device, whether it's a cell phone or a base station, to kind of springboard the information to a host.
Jeff Bennett, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Whoever is out there holding our mother, we want to hear from you. We haven't heard anything directly. We need you to reach out, and we need a way to communicate with you so we can move forward. But first, we have to know that you have our mom. We want to talk to you, and we are waiting for contact.
An apparent ransom letter setting two deadlines, one last night, one on Monday. Authorities say they are following all leads.
We've probably gone through well over 100 tips. I don't want to discourage anybody. All tips, there's no tip too small.
CNN's Maribel Gonzalez is live in Arizona with the latest on the investigation. Maribel, I know there's a new timeline. What else can you tell us about these ransom notes?
Yeah, Adi, good morning. Well, those ransom notes, the FBI still has not said whether or not these are legitimate, but they are taking them very seriously. And clearly the family is too, as you can hear from those videos they have posted to social media. Now, that ransom note has been sent to several media outlets, and the FBI has confirmed that we're talking about the same note. Now, those who have seen the note say that it says that Nancy is okay but scared, but also is demanding millions of dollars in Bitcoin, and also details information that, according again to those who have seen the notes, only someone privy to this case could know. Take a listen to what someone from TMZ had to say about that.
They do mention an Apple Watch, as the FBI said, and they do mention the floodlight, the damaged floodlight. There is something else. And it is the placement of the Apple Watch, which has not come out. And if that placement is accurate, I'm sure that is something that puts this letter on the FBI's radar.
Now, TMZ is one of those newsrooms that received that purported ransom note. Now, another key detail that we learned in the sheriff's latest update is that there was blood recovered from Nancy's home, the home that you see behind me, that was left behind on the porch. Now, after analyzing those blood samples, they were able to confirm that that blood did belong to Nancy. Another key thing that investigators are saying is that they're operating as though Nancy Guthrie is still alive. However, up until this point, they have not received any proof of life. Audie?
Okay, that's Maribel Gonzalez talking to us from Arizona.
This morning, chilling new details about the purported ransom note sent in the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, the mother of Today Show host Savannah Guthrie, as the family makes a new plea to whomever abducted her. At least 3 media outlets received ransom notes this week. The FBI says one of them included 2 deadlines. The first, 5 p.m. yesterday, has already passed. The other is this Monday. The FBI also says there was a mention of Nancy Guthrie's Apple Watch and a floodlight at the home. Among the outlets that received the notice, TMZ, whose founder, Harvey Levin, told CNN the letter indicated Nancy is okay but scared, and that the family will have no way of contacting her captors or captor. Levin also mentioned a key detail in the note about the Apple Watch that could prove that the note they received is legitimate.
They do mention an Apple Watch, as the FBI said, and they do mention the floodlight, the damaged floodlight. There is something else, and it is the placement of the Apple Watch, which has not come out. And if that placement is accurate, I'm sure that is something that puts this letter on the FBI's radar. They began the letter by saying that that Nancy is okay but scared. So they say she is okay, and also that she's aware of the letter and the demands.
It is heartbreaking hearing that. We're also hearing from the family who are desperate for proof of life. Nancy Guthrie's son issued another appeal on social media to her abductors.
Whoever is out there holding our mother, we want to hear from you. We haven't heard anything directly. We need you to reach out, and we need a way to communicate with you so we can move forward. But first, we have to know that you have our mom. We want to talk to you, and we are waiting for contact.
CNN's Maribel Gonzalez is live outside Nancy Guthrie's home in Pima County, Arizona. What are you learning is the latest from your vantage point?
Good morning, Sarah. Well, no suspects and new reward. That is the latest information in the search for